Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Factorio Masochists Marathon. Now on episode 15, sort of starting to feel like we're getting into the series a little bit now with this first ever 0.15 playthrough for me. This is my first ever. I've not even had one in my personal time. So we set up some science doing stone walls very quickly there, and then I decided to do some stack inserter capacity upgrades. I think we do the first two, but we're only using them in the iron depot, but mainly to get to the non-stack upgrades, just because I kind of felt like doing something a little bit different from the lasers, and also I couldn't decide where I want to go next. Whilst recording this whole thing, I was contemplating getting onto the high-tech science packs. I was having a look at between yellow and purple, trying to decide which would be most beneficial, and I think I've decided on high-tech science packs because they give me the next upgrades to lasers, which I think I'm going to need as soon as we hit behemoths, which is not far away. So the quicker I get those done, the better, really. The less I have to worry about behemoths. So I get another balancer in on the belt because I noticed the top belt was starting to back up a little bit. It wasn't getting passed down properly, and I thought that was the most adequate place to balance it again. Still not happy with the belt splitting off, basically. I'm still tempted to use a priority splitter, but then I keep forgetting that we're not really getting enough iron through to satisfy the whole thing, so no wonder it's a trickle. So I really need to tackle that goal, but this episode I couldn't help but keep thinking about that, but we'll go into that later on. So I've set up some automation of walls just a moment ago. We've also set up some very temporary automation of laser turrets. I didn't really want to take batteries back on the belt, and it just fits so nicely in there. I thought that'll do for now until we get to logistics, which actually shouldn't be too far away. I realised I've been playing way too much Bobs. I realised how close the bots actually were, so we may get on with that fairly soon. I just need to obviously keep concentrating on this shortage of resources before we get on to anything like that. So we'll be still a little while, but obviously science-wise it's not too far away. I also decide to just come and expand the battery production. I know I'm still only using them for lasers, but it was nice to just get a couple more running now. We've passing it onto a belt. But yeah, I need to automate lasers because of something we're going to be getting on with later on in the episode, which obviously we'll get into, but we get those batteries all set up. I also clear up these ghost images because they did start to annoy me. So I come and have a look at the oil processing area because it wasn't running completely, and we got rid of the heavy. And it took me a moment to remember, after all my ranting last episode, or at least I think it was last episode, it might have been two now, that I forgot to put the output for the heavy to light. So I finally get that in. We leave that running a bit just to see if that all gets running okay. I also realised I haven't really been using the car enough. I should really be using it a bit more to speed things up, so I'm going to try and do that this episode and try and remember to use it more. We come and take out a base here that was nervously close to the factory, so I come and clear that group of nests up, and then we come and chuck in some lasers as well. There's no point putting in normal turrets because they'll get trashed. Hopefully those lasers are enough to take on a caravan. So the first half of this episode is a bit of a caretakery-esque episode. I'm going to go around all the outposts and just clean up any miners. It is going to be a little bit of a theme for this series. I'll obviously try and not emphasize on it too much, but with these poor richness patches, miners are going to be depleting very quickly, and it'd be quite efficient for me to recycle them quite regularly. But obviously, like I said last episode, my idea with the line is I want it to be quite linear. I want it to be heading out in roughly one direction or maybe two opposite directions. So we branch out quite far as much as we can. And hopefully the patches will get richer and richer. I have actually recorded this episode before the last episode went out. I'm trying to get a little bit ahead for various reasons, which I may go into in a little bit. But yeah, Iron Outpost 1 has depleted quite a few miners. So we come and clear those out. This patch isn't going to last much longer. There is going to be the annoying little bits that are quite concentrated, but I will try and keep on top of it, but obviously not visiting it too often. I may even, after this episode, just leave it until it completely depletes. But we shift over the input lines and just adjust those slightly to try and even that out a little bit and justify where the iron is coming in the most, because the east side of the patch is where we planted miners last. Also notice that miner there is just depleted, and a few more probably will as well. And then we make our way over to the coal outpost, because again, a number of miners have depleted here, but I also wanted to increase the rate in which we were mining the coal, because the starting patch of coal is pretty much almost gone. We do go and visit it in a minute, but yeah, it hasn't got many episodes left in the series that it'll be mining. So I'm sticking with the basic pole layout. I would say it's to be efficient, but I'll actually be honest, it just really satisfies me how well the layout works. I've never actually used it this much before. I usually run a mile as soon as I can away from basic poles, but for some reason this layout is just very satisfying for me. It covers the patch almost completely, but you have to have the gap for the basic pole, but it's kind of nice. I quite like it. I can't really say why, apart from solely the aesthetics of it is just very satisfying when you place them out, and it's the perfect length for a pole. So I'm just going to keep using it for now to be efficient. That's exactly what it is. Take a little risk riding on the rails there, but I need to use the car more and not have to get out for trees to come and have a look at the starting patch of copper and coal, which are depleting quicker and quicker. Again, I'm probably going to leave it after this now and just wait for them to empty completely, but we put in a couple of belts just to try and balance that coal out as best we can, because half the miners weren't mining, but they are all now mining. And we also put some fuel in the brick production. I really should set up some proper brick production, but to be honest, it won't go on the bus until we do purple science. So, and as I've decided to do high tech first, that probably won't be for a while. So hopefully we can mine that whole stone patch before we start putting it on the bus, but I guess it doesn't really matter. So we come back to the depot and we take the second iron train up to Iron Outpost 2 just to come and add some more miners, but also deal with a sneaky biter nest that has gone and shoved its way in here. I don't know how they got here. I kind of get a bit too close, triggering an attack, and I realized I didn't actually have many turrets on me, so this was kind of a bit of a dirt. We actually end up losing a turret here, which is a bit stupid just for taking out this base, but oh well. I can't always... I guess that's what I get for being quite cheeky with the long reach, because I stuck that pole in ridiculously close, and I guess I deserve it really for trying to... I guess it's abuse of the mechanic, but I don't really know. Some may call it abuse. Some may not. I don't know. I do. Yeah, I say it is. I don't know. I'm just ranting now, just making stupid noises. Anyway, on with the episode. So, one thing I messed up last episode was there was a tiny bit of the iron patch here that I covered over. So I came and moved the belts back a bit just so we do manage to mine that. I also wanted to add another 2 belts because I decided we really need the iron from here with Iron Outpost 1 depleting, so we really need to increase the rate in which it's coming in. So I add another 2 belts in and we stick a 6-to-4 belt balancer and we move all these belts over as well, just so we can get that patch that wasn't previously covered. And then there's a bit of a dirt with me trying to get enough spaces in. I don't really count it properly, and I think 3 times in total I moved that first belt over. Then to go and add these in, and I realize I have to do it once again. I really should have looked at this properly, sort of done it backwards. That's the best way to do it. Start with the closest belt and work your way out to the one on the outside, rather than trying to do the outside one and then realize 3 times in a row you've placed it in the wrong place. So I moved those miners over there because I didn't quite follow the rule of the basic pole, but we get all those extra miners running. That should help with the input of iron. Again, I don't want to push it too far because we're so close to biters. I think what my tactic is going to be is, while soon we'll be doing the advanced electronics, which I think is the research for the high-tech pack. We'll do that. While we're doing that, we'll start to work on achieving another iron patch. Once we have that, we'll then lay that out in the factory, which will give us access to more laser upgrades, and then while doing those laser upgrades, I shall push out to more patches. Yeah, a bit tedious in terms of the theme of each episode, but I think I'm kind of stuck in the way I have to go in order to avoid any kind of stalemates in this game. But once we reach a point where clearing biters isn't a problem and we can produce loads of land, we can really start to up the rate of science that we're producing, and we can start to really hammer some of that infinite science, but with the 4 times tech we're doing and expensive resources. So we should be able to hoover up quite a lot of resources. I'm quite excited about the prospects of how big the rail network can get with the amount of resources we're going to have to gather. Yes, I'm going to have to be spending a lot of time setting up new outposts, which I had an idea about how I could record. I could keep it in the episode, but like with the last series, we could do some 6 times speed episodes where, say, I'm just doing pure outposts, an entire episode. I could do it at 6 times speed. So then there's 2 hours worth of gameplay in 20 minutes, which should turn out to be pretty interesting. You've already seen me set up several outposts, so there's nothing in particular you'll be missing out on. And plus, I don't have to do things outside of the recording, which I really want to avoid. I still haven't decided how I'm going to go about doing biters. I think it was last episode I kind of put the question out to say what would be the most enjoyable, a live stream, heavily edited episodes where I do updates, my speech being really messy again today, or I could do the 6 times speed, or even 7 or 8 times speed. I've not actually tried that yet. It could be quite ridiculous. Who knows? So the second half of the episode, and why I set up the automation of laser production, is I want to start working on filling in the bottlenecks around the northeast, because there's some really nice ones that I should really take advantage of. But plus, where those bottlenecks end, I want to take the wall up to. At the moment, they're not going to stop expansion until I clear an entire area. But where we've scanned up to with the radar, the bottlenecks go up to, I want to take the wall up to there and then put another radar in. Then after a couple of episodes, while that's scanned, it'll hopefully find where the next lake is to take a wall to. And then another couple of episodes, I can do this again. And eventually we'll create a whole perimeter around the factory and we'll keep those defenses nice and out of any pollution we create. Then when I get on with things like uranium processing, or when we get on with actually doing science at a proper rate, and we really start to produce some real pollution, can try and keep away from any regular attacks. So I have a bit of a pondering here, looking around at certain techs I need, and I decide to go for advanced electronics. So that'll give us the high-tech packs and access to the rest of the laser upgrades, which should hopefully be enough to deal with behemoth biters. They will require speed module 1s, but to be honest, to research that, I think it's literally green and red science, or just green, red and blue, so that shouldn't be too much of a problem. And while we're starting to lay out this wall, we get an attack on the bit of rail, which I was kind of expecting it to happen on, and we lose the radar. But we take a look at it for a bit and nothing else gets destroyed. No powers cut out to Iron Outpost 2. They literally just took out the radar, and even the train made it through without taking any damage. So very odd, not sure what's happened there, and as the radar's destroyed, we can't really see. So we will go and have a look at that in a bit. But being as I'm here on the opposite side of the factory, I'll go and deal with it in a bit, unless obviously we start getting more alarms. So I did pick up some grenades earlier because I really did not want to be doing this thing with manual cutting down trees. I know it is a bit of use of resources, but to be honest, now we've got that new iron patch, I'm not too concerned about grenades being too expensive. It is going to save me a lot of time, which will help against the race against evolution, which is just basically another one of my many excuses. So the idea here is I'm putting in a laser turret every other space in a diagonal direction to hopefully use the least number of lasers that I need. Hopefully it's enough to stop caravans, which again, that's what this wall of lasers is really meant to do. I'm also sneaking up along the edges of the lakes just to fill in the bottlenecks. Hopefully these lasers can defend from any attacks or caravans coming through. As far as my experiences go so far, and even more so from that attack on the radar earlier, caravans don't really care about the poles running along the lake, and this will allow me to push out radars to carry on looking out for more bottlenecks, so I can use the landscape and geography as most efficiently as I can. Then when I finally reach the lake that we've scanned up in the north, and I'm confident no caravans can get in, I can then clear all the biters within the perimeter, and so long as I get rid of every nest, we shouldn't have to worry about any more expansion in that area, and then any resources within that area is fair dues, fair grabs for us to go and grab. Fair grabs? I don't know what I'm going on about there. So we have this bottleneck filled in. I then start working my way up to the next one I wanted to try and achieve this episode, but the amount of turrets I had and poles and everything, I wasn't quite sure if we'd make it, but I can at least get the poles up there and start to put some turrets out and at least get a radar in, because that's the main reason why we're doing this, is just to scan out in the area and just try and find the best bottlenecks that we can. And hopefully within those areas will be some really nice resources. So again, past me being very picky with the placement of power poles, making sure they are at the maximum length to get the most use out of them, but mainly just so they're all lovely and straight, because yeah, otherwise I just get a bit triggered. Taking out any nearby bases just to prevent any unnecessary attacks or them just coming at me without any laser turrets out. And yeah, so I aim for this pinnacle of water kind of sticking out. It seems the most shortest part of the bottleneck. It doesn't quite line up with the other lake, but that's fine. We can create a corner. Corners pointing with the outside of the corner pointing attacks is bad because it's kind of a weak spot, but if the wall's going the other way, It's actually quite strong. So I start to clear exactly where I want to put the wall. Probably could have put it a tiny bit more forward. But it turns out there's quite a few nests around here, and I do trigger a few attacks, retreating back to my little pile of turrets, and then I start placing out where the wall's going to be, which kind of gives us a foothold to deal with this nest as well. We don't want any nests too close, because again, if we get those biters or spitters wandering around that then get attacked, it then triggers another attack, which then just triggers a continuous wave of biters just constantly coming. We don't want that, because that's going to be a constant drain on resources, on power, and if we run out of power, they're then going to take those turrets out, and it's just then a waste of resources. So the idea is these really are just to stop caravans, like I explained earlier. I should really stop repeating the same points over and over. So we sort of reach a point here where we're getting attacked from this nest over in the east. Their attacks are then triggering attacks from up in the north, and it kind of turns out to be a difficult situation. I try and deal with the nest, but I really underestimated the size of that nest, or that neighborhood. It's quite a huge collection of nests, so that was pretty stupid. I didn't really have many turrets on me or poles, so I decide to retreat for now, taking a worm out there in the trees, and I decide to sort of leave it at that. That should be far enough for that neighborhood, and I try and ignore it and decide to carry on pushing up with the wall. I am kind of running out of poles here, so I do really need to get some more before I can finish this bottleneck, but past me was quite determined to at least try and get there. Then I trigger a huge attack from those groups, which wasn't great. I decide it's a bit too overwhelming because I run out of poles. I try and take out those nests, and then we start getting attacks coming through from other surrounding neighborhoods, and I decide to retreat completely rather than lose some turrets, and we'll make a much better effort if we come back with a load more poles and a load more turrets. So I'll leave that wall for now, leaving a load of turrets behind just to defend the area, and we come back down to with the idea of heading back to the factory for more resources, and then I decide to come and put a wall in here because we did get some wall production set up this episode, so I may as well get a wall in here and just see how it looks. So I get a bit confused in places with placing it out. I want it one space away from the laser turret. I don't know if it's still a thing, but this always stems from biters being able to bite things immediately on the other side of the wall. I don't know if it is still a thing, but to be honest, I kind of like that one space anyway. Partly from Bob's with the whole exploding range stuff. I don't really know. I then realized I haven't put a radar up there, and I'm not really going to have time to finish the bottleneck this episode. So I come and put a radar up there, which is right on the edge of the fog of war anyway. I go to drive back the normal way and decide to risk it and go through those nests, and I get away with it. But obviously I can't drive through this bit. I also fully zoomed out here, noticed something I've not actually noticed before. These two belts there line up absolutely perfectly. So at some point when this coal up here is depleted, I'm going to cut through those trees and have the belt nicely lined up. Shame it doesn't line up with the output from the station, but oh well, this will just have to do. It'll have to have at least one kink in it. One kink's not as bad as two or three even. I think it has at the moment. That stone miner has also depleted, so I get that sorted out. I could even have the coal coming from the station going straight all the way up to the lake and then going up next to the power there. That would look quite neat and tidy, but obviously that isn't really my concern with this series. Then on my way up to check on what had happened to that radar, I noticed that all the refineries still aren't fully running and we've still got full storage of heavy. So I decided to put in another refiner. I think I've got the ratios right. It's just with all that backed up heavy we had before doing the cracking, I think I need the extra one just so we can catch up. But we get that all hooked up in so we can hopefully work our way through that heavy oil and take away those two tanks that I'm probably not going to use in this area. And we come and have a look up to see what happened to the radar. So it looks like a base had spawned right next to it. Whether it was the caravan that destroyed it or after the base had established it then attacked it, I don't know. But they've certainly ignored the power poles, which is quite interesting. Very good for me because I can continue to dig my way through the Red Sea like this and not have to worry too much. Probably avoid putting out radars, but we'll just have to see how it goes. But yeah, the map looking very red all the way around us. I was planning on staying on it a bit longer in the recording so we could talk about it more, but clearly that didn't last very long at this kind of speed. So I come up just to check Iron Outpost 2, just to make sure everything is okay. We haven't actually had any attacks up here as far as I can tell, so we leave that area running as it is, hopefully getting enough iron. But yeah, I'm not going to cover the whole thing in miners. I just want to keep an eye on it and have a certain reserve of iron just in case I suddenly spot a reason why we may experience a stalemate. and need that extra iron to avoid it. So I come and have a look at the batteries. I kind of want to balance the belt so it's nice and full. This is going to be the input for the bus. So I try a couple of times to put a balancer in. Finally finishing with that one I haven't really used for a while, but I actually quite like it. It lines up quite nicely. I then come and have a look at the blue science again. We did look at it earlier to try and equal out the distribution of iron. But again, this is all negligible. It's not going to make a difference until I get a proper throughput of iron. We have got enough space on the bus for 8 belts of iron, I think it is, or it might be 10. I can't remember the spacing on the blue belt now. It might be 10. 2 lots of 4, and then the 2 in the middle, I think it is. And last but not least, we decide to double up our circuit production because we are now pretty much using circuits, green circuits at the rate that we can produce them. And to be honest, it's inevitable that I'm going to need to expand this area. So I do it anyway. But again, this area is laid out with the ability to output 4 belts of green circuits. I don't know if I've left enough room to have enough resources inputting to produce that many. There's enough room for 4 belts of iron and 4 belts of copper, maybe even 6 belts of copper if we shoehorn the beacons in with underground belts. But you can see a ghost image there on the left hand side of me, which shows where the second copper belt's going to go. But yeah, the way I've laid it out, the bottleneck will probably be iron. There's only enough room for 4 belts of iron, and to be honest, when producing circuits, iron's not used the most. I think it is copper. So yeah, that's how that area is generally spaced out. And then I come and have a look at the main bus again, because this is where I kind of would like to have a priority splitter. Now, I know there are problems with it, but in my Bob's Angels playthrough, I do use them, and I never had a throughput problem. It depends on how you lay it out. There's a couple of ways of doing it. The belt shuffler didn't really work exactly how it should, but the actual priority splitter worked okay. But I really should stop getting hung up on this. This can all be solved with some belt upgrades, which I'm not going to be doing anytime soon. Another thing I find is a load of big electric poles on the end of one of the iron smelting rows. No idea how they got there, but that's going to be all we have time for. I do hope you have enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching, and please do come and join me in the next episode. Bye bye.